On the seventh day, march around the city 7 times. Then the priests should make a long blast with the ram's horn. As soon as you hear the sound of the people shall shout a great shout.
This is Visions. This one is by Sarah Manette. She's a very wise woman from what I could tell in her vision, because she can obviously talk to God. And this was while she had just before committed suicide. She was shown a vision of the end times and what it would be like. This vision took place back in the 70s, and I think it's very relevant to now because of the fact of Polar Vortex 2. The Polar Vortex was already bad enough. Now we have the next one coming. So let's go through this here. I hope you can stay along. It's a very long vision. As I tried to look away from my black surroundings, a small light started to shine in front of me. And the darkness, sounds, and feelings that had so completely oppressed me started to fade into the background. The light grew bigger, and a window opened up, much the same as when I had witnessed my life's review. This time, however, a panoramic view of the entire earth lay before me. It came closer and closer, as if I had been put out in space and was flying toward it. I knew what was happening was intended to help me make my decision about going back to the earth for my terrible life. A part of me wanted to go back to the beautiful spirit world, or paradise, that I had seen, and another part of me felt the need to be reunited with my body so I could change my life. It was a tug of war, and what I was about to see was to help me to understand what I would be going through if I chose to go back to my body of clay. Again, the view before me played out like a videotape in fast-forward motion, and yet I could see the scene in perfect clarity and was able to comprehend everything that transpired. As the earth zoomed up into my view, I first saw the whole world, and then various countries. It made clear to me that in the future there would be wars and troubles, including nuclear attacks in various places of the world, and a view of how it would start was given. Hang on. Scroll down here. I am not familiar with the geography of the world, but as I looked at the various lands before my view, I instinctively knew what countries they were. Looking at the Middle East, I watched as a mass missile flew from Libya and hit Israel. That's going on now. The mushroom cloud that resulted from the blast was visible, and I knew that the missile contained a nuclear bomb. I was aware that those responsible for the missile were Iranian. That's the nuclear deal with Iranian. Sorry, I got lost. But the missile had been hidden and fired from within the borders of Libya. Almost immediately after this, other missiles began flying from one country to another, quickly spreading war around the world. I also saw that many nuclear explosions did not come from missiles but from bombs, some kind on the ground, suitcase bombs, van nukes, I mean, you name it, the government has it. My focus then changed from the Middle East to the United States, and I understood that I was about to see some of the things that would lead up to the nuclear holocaust, or the nuclear winter, that I had just witnessed. As I looked upon the continent of North America, I zeroed in on the eastern coast, and then on New York specifically. The fact that New York has been mentioned in so many different visions, my wife had as a vision of New York, a bomb going off. It's on the $100 bill. There's a lot of people in New York. I saw New York City with all of its people and buildings. I then saw some tall buildings crashing to earth, surrounded by tremendous amounts of smoke, dust, and debris. I zoomed in closer into the smoke and dust. and I saw a woman holding a little girl's hand and running from the crashing buildings. The woman had long dark hair, hanging past her shoulders, and curled inward slightly. She wore a beige business suit, heels of a slightly darker color, perhaps tan, and she was not wearing glasses. The little girl appeared to be about 6 or 7 years old, with short brown hair reaching below the chin and cut in a type of page boy look. No idea what that means. They ran together, holding hands and trying to escape from the falling buildings. As they ran through the heavy smoke and dust, they were forced to let go of their hands and became separated. The child was terrified, and I could hear her screaming, "Mommy, Mommy," over and over again. It's a very terrifying vision. I don't know their outcome, if they lived or died, but I can still see the face of the woman clearly and could easily identify her from a photo or describe her as sketch artists. I asked if an earthquake had caused the buildings to fall and felt impressed that the answer was no. However, I was not given any indication as to the cause of the destruction. Incidentally, I told this story many times before September 11, 2001. When I did see on television the World Trade Center towers collapsing, I knew that this was what I had seen. Wow. The next thing that came to me was more felt than seen. It was the understanding that shortly after the crashings of the buildings in New York City, commerce ceased, shopping and buying seemed to stop, and the economy failed throughout the world. Few had any money at all, and those who did have it could not buy anything worth it. Gold and silver and other commodities had value, and it could be traded. I then saw a man walk into the middle of a crowd of people and drop what seemed like a quart jar full of liquid. The jar broke and the liquid spread. I understood that people nearby had become infected with the disease from the liquid, and they didn't even know it. Virus X, I mean, you name it. A day or two later, the people became sick and started dying. I saw that this would happen in 4 particular cities: New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Salt Lake City. The disease started with white blisters, some the size of a dime, appearing the hands, arms, and face of the victims. The blisters quickly developed into white puffy sores. Those with the disease would stumble around and fall over dead. Many died within a short time, perhaps 24 hours. Pestilence. It's a very dark vision, but it's also a very truthful one. I believe it's going to come to pass as well. I also saw other people with a flu-like virus. Oh crap, really? That spread more quickly than the first disease. The victims had blood coming from their nose, mouth, and eyes and ears. These people died even faster of this disease, and the ones who had the first sickness, these diseases became widespread across the United States, with hundreds of thousands infected. Pandemic, H1N1, all strains of the flu virus, bird flu, superbug. As the people were fleeing the cities in the hope of saving their lives, gangs were attacking them and killing them in the towns that were struck with disease. There was chaos, looting, rioting, and murders involved in a complete breakdown of society. Many people seemed to go crazy. I sensed that the electricity had failed everywhere. Did you hear that? And that nothing was running throughout the country, including any of the communication systems. I watched people throw rocks through windows to steal TVs that would not work. You really think how dumb people are? They're going to go steal TVs and crap. They don't care. Oh, TV, woohoo, money, money, money. And thought it was very strange. While I watched all this happening in the United States, my view instantly jumped back to the Middle East. And I saw the same thing taking place in Israel. The same sores and the same types of sickness and disease that were plaguing the U.S. had also been unleashed in Israel. I'd like to interject this. There was also an article that I've read, and I might actually have to agree with it. It says that God has divorced Israel. Not his people, not Israelites. We could all be descendants of Israelites or the Greek. But he hasn't divorced his people, because his people still believe. His real true believers still do. Have faith. Keep the faith. But the state of Israel, he's divorced that. The switch in view only lasted in an instant, and I was back in the United States. There was a tremendously long winter, that caught everyone by surprise, following the siege of sickness. It started early and lasted into the summer months. A famine had begun over the few years leading up to the long winter because of storms, droughts, floods, and other plagues that had taken place, and the abnormally long cold period seemed to cause the famine to suddenly increase to its full measure. What are we looking at? In the period of time following the disease, which was quickly followed by the long winter, things started going downhill even more quickly. Events piled up, one on top of another, without any breaks. My sense of timing was not very clear at this moment, however, because I was seeing several things happening all at the same time or very close together. Give me 1 sec, I gotta grab a sip of coffee. During and after the long winter, the disease spread everywhere and increased in severity. The economy and the electricity were completely gone. Chaos and anarchy reigned over the entire United States. Without any government, there was a total breakdown. And I saw people panicking everywhere. They were trying in vain to find food. There was none. I saw people even digging in the ground for worms to eat because they were so hungry from the lack of food. Prepare yourselves. Also, during this time, I became aware that there was very little drinking water. Oh my gosh, no way. Very little drinking water. What are we going through right now, folks? I'm not trying to scare anyone here. I want to make that very clear. But you need to understand this. Jesus Christ of Nazareth is the only good news, and we can leave this mess behind. Also, during this time, I became aware that there was very little drinking water, and remaining water had become contaminated, so that if a person drank it, they would contract the disease and die. Because of their great thirst, many people drank the water in spite of the danger of poisoning and died. I mentioned earlier the gangs that killed people trying to escape the cities. It seemed that some of the people had lost their minds and went around in these gangs killing people just for the sake of killing. Remove the demons and feelings and emotions of murder, and that'll go away. In Jesus' name, amen. Others killed for food to gain some material possessions from their victims. Those that were killing for no reason were like beasts, animals, completely out of control, as they raped, looted, burned, and butchered people. I saw these gangs go into the homes of those who were hiding. They would drag them out of their hiding places, rape and dismember them. What's going on in Syria with the rebels? This is exactly what they're doing. Did you not think that this was going to come to the United States? This country's gone. For many, there was an unnatural fear and hatred that came over the people. Family ties that once existed between husbands and wives, parents and children no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was individual survival. It even says that in the Bible. Brother versus brother, sister versus sister, husband versus wife, father versus son, and mother versus daughter. I mean, this is all biblical. This is why we have to try our